There you go. All right. So we recently connected again when we kind of you found out what I was doing.
Yeah.
And you were super generous and said, "Hey, been through some experiences and interested in what Bereave is doing, but also sharing my experience, sharing your experience, your family's experience, in case it might help." And of course,
yeah.
I said, as long as you're open to that, like, game on, because what we continue to hear from people in texts and phone calls and random LinkedIn messages are things like, "Hey, I have an experience I'd like to share." And it's often could be part of their grieving process. It could be an experience they had that they don't want anybody else to have. And so they're looking to us to kind of, help get their message out. But people have been incredibly generous in sharing and helping us discover what it is exactly we need to solve.
Absolutely.
And again, that's kind of, your generosity here is appreciated. So, we talked a little bit about the most recent loss that your family had. I would love to hear just a little bit about that to start.
Yeah. So to go into depth about it, it was my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, and my husband and I have been together for over a decade. So she was I was very close with her, very much a part of our lives, a wonderful, wonderful person, mother, all of that. We did live across the country from her, and she got very sick and didn't tell anyone.
Okay, and so you and your husband?
We were in Denver.
Jake in Denver.
Yep, my husband Jake and I were in Denver.
Okay.
She was in Florida.
Okay, gotcha.
And so he got a call about like the first week in March. That was, "I'm really sick. I'm going to the doctors. It is cancer. But we don't have an official diagnosis," sort of thing. "I'm not going to do anything about it." So by the time he went pretty much immediately, and I said, "I will be there." We didn't know how much time she had. We thought it was just a visit. And I came like at the end of the week, took some PTO at my then job. And by the time that I saw her, the first time that I saw her, it was very apparent that this was not just a visit. This was, we're staying and we don't know for how long, but this is it.
You needed to be there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And this was, my husband's mother was his last remaining parent.
Okay.
He was 31, 32 when we were going through this. So he had lost his dad when he was 10.
And what's her name?
Deb.
Deb.
Yeah,
cool.
Deb. Not Debbie.
Just Deb. Just Deb. Don't go Debbie.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Very adamant about that.
Okay.
And, the first moment that I had with her, with my husband, we were having to carry her to the bathroom. I mean, it was that, it had progressed that much by then.
She had no other help at that point?
So we did have my husband's stepfather was there. And I think he was in a bit of denial, to be honest.
Sure.
He was like, he was talking about treatment and we're going to the doctors and, this is fine. And then talking with her, she was saying, "This is it. I know he wants me to do those things, but I'm not doing that."
No interest.
Nope. She watched all of her kids get married. She had a grandchild. And she felt like, "Hey, you guys are settled. I want to be with your dad."
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so the children ended up, she turned over medical power of attorney to my sister-in-law, Amanda.
Okay. And how many siblings does Jake have?
Jake has, his sister Amanda's the oldest. She's 6 years older than the boys. She also lived in Florida.
Okay.
And then Jake and his brother Ben are twins.
Okay.
Ben lived in Indiana, and he is the one that has the grandchild.
Okay.
Also, him and his wife. And then again, Jake and I lived in Denver at the time. So
Sure.
all really spread out.
Right.
And I know Ben and his wife, Katie, and the baby, Olivia, had just visited like a month before, and Deb was active. She was playing with her grandchild. She was, but she couldn't like go to the beach. She couldn't do certain things that she would have that wasn't uncommon for her to not go, but probably would have liked to have gone with her grandchild for sure.
Sure. And was that like a red flag of sorts for Ben, or didn't really register at the time?
Because she I don't think it was. She didn't go to the beach a ton with us when we would visit anyway, so it wasn't necessarily a red flag, but it was like, she was definitely like slower.
Yeah.
Even though she was being playful and
Sure.
Enjoying her granddaughter, it was slower.
Yeah, totally.
And she had health issues like on and off too, so like she had been in a car accident, so that had impeded like how often she could be active and go do things with us. So yeah, it was,
looking back you notice it but not notice it at the time.
Hindsight 2020. Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
So you and Jake are there. Is Amanda there at that point?
Amanda's there.
Okay.
Her husband Brad was there.
Okay.
I ended up being the one to call Ben and Katie and say, I think you should get down here.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion? Just gut?
Yeah. She had Deb had her doctor's appointment scheduled for the following week.
Okay.
On Wednesday. This was the Friday prior. Monday, she turned over power of attorney, Sunday or Monday, she turned over medical power of attorney to Amanda. Monday, she had her hospice visit. Tuesday, she was in full hospice. She wasn't making it to the doctor's appointment.
It's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, it was pretty traumatic in the sense that like it was all very quick. Yeah. Not only were we having to figure out what to do as the children,
Yeah.
And these kids, this was my first time, besides like losing a grandparent, this was my first time dealing with a pretty heavy, close caregiving situation and loss. But these kids have, Amanda, Jake, and Ben, because they had lost their father before and they've just dealt with some loss in general. Sure. They were very much like, this is what we need to do. We need to do, X, Y, and Z. We need to cover this ground. But even they didn't know, Mom wants to donate her body to science. How do I do that? Who do I call?
We know the wish, but like, what do you...
Right.
How do you know how to actually make that happen?
Yeah, we had to call around and figure it out. Same thing for hospice. We interviewed a couple of places and ended up having only one come in and interview with her. And basically, I mean, it was like we needed it immediately. She should have had it like 2 weeks prior.
How did you know how to interview hospice? Like, how do you?
We didn't.
Okay. So what did you do?
I mean, honestly, it was probably more of them telling us what we needed to do. And so because we were so lost, and then it was like they had good Google reviews. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. And Deb was still coherent at that time. Basically, she asked us to call hospice when she was too tired to make it to the bathroom anymore.
Okay.
So she was like, I'm done.
Right.
This is too painful. I'm too tired. And prior to that, I will say this, a little, it's a little bit of humor in this. So at first she had the boys basically like walking her to the bathroom. And then eventually it was me walking her to the bathroom and staying with her while she was going to the bathroom, and I would brush her hair. But then she was like, I would like Bailey, because she was taller than me, but she was crouched over.
Okay.
And she was like, you're just, you're the perfect height. You're short and sturdy. So everyone the rest of the week was like, yeah, Bailey's real sturdy.
Sturdy.
It's like, yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
Like an old table or something.
I was like, I'll take it. Yeah, exactly. Like an old table. Yeah. I was like, I will take that with pride for sure.
It's interesting though, and I kind of hear that you're talking physically, and you know, I'm totally projecting here, but I'm wondering if there was also something that was, you know, mentally sturdy and emotionally sturdy, and something that you were giving her outside of just that physical sturdiness.
I think that she didn't want her kids to do one of the most vulnerable things and maybe embarrassing, you know, bodily function thing. And I don't think she wanted her kids to see her like that at that point, because she was no longer able to make it to the bathroom, shut the door, and do it herself. It was, you know, just a bodily function that she needed assistance with. And I tried really, really hard to make it not embarrassing and humor. We would laugh. We, again, I would brush her hair and just try to give her some, you know, grace and comfort.
Yeah. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. How did you know to go? Did she ask? Did Deb ask you to come, or like how did you know to get there?
I can't speak for Jake, but I know I said you have to go.
Something that you heard?
No, it was just, I know for my husband, there are things that are more important than work, than bills, than whatever, than PTO.
Sure.
You just got to go. You got to be there for your mom. And I will say for him at that point, I was not in a remote job personally. So I had to take off PTO. But he was able to quote unquote like work from home. And then he had been with his company for a while. So once we kind of understood what was happening, they were very gracious as well. But no, it was just, this is your mother. She is sick. She's your only parent. I know the impact that losing his father has had, and you got to go.
Yeah. Totally. Great call. I've always had trouble going, like making a call, like, do I go, do I not? Right. And it's, for some reason it's been paralyzing, but at the same time, I've gotten to a place in my life, and I'm, 42, where it's like, if you think you need to, you need to. Yep. Right.
If you've got that gut, I think what I said was, you're never going to regret going and just spending time with your family. Right. If that's what it ends up being. Sure. But you're going to regret not going.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And that's so real. And I'm replaying, a handful of situations where that would have been absolutely true. For sure. We have a saying, like, my husband and I, if we're trying to make up our minds, I say, just pick one side. Or excuse me, I'll pick one side. So like if we're flipping it, we'll just do flipping a coin. It's heads. Are you disappointed that it's heads? You if you're disappointed that it's heads, then you need to do tails. The other thing. Yep. Right. Yep. Ooh, I love that. Yeah. One thing I wanted to hear a little bit more about, you shared with me before, something Jake said to you, that was pretty powerful. It was so special. And, it was so, thoughtful of him and really selfless of him. We obviously ended up staying longer than we thought we were going to. So we were going to the store for some clothing. And on our way to the store, it was our first time out of the house in days. And on our way to the store, he said, I started crying. And then I was just apologizing. I'm so sorry. This is your mother. I shouldn't be crying right now. And what he said was, there is no hierarchy to grief. It's okay for you to feel these feelings. It doesn't mean that I don't feel them. And it doesn't mean that your feelings are less or more important. There's no hierarchy to grief. Yeah. Do you have any, that's such a powerful thing. I've shared it with a couple people since you told me, and it was just like, holy shit. Like that's real. Yep. And, compassionate and empathetic, and anything that you can think of from an emotional stability perspective, like it fits that category. Totally. And for somebody who is, you're both going through the loss, but it's his mom, like kind of like you're alluding to, for him to think in those terms is, probably pretty extraordinary.
It was a gift.
Yeah.
It was honestly a gift. He allowed me to feel my feelings and to feel them unobstructed and freely.
Sure. Yeah.
And then that kind of like opened up a waterfall and I was crying around everyone.
Sure. Right. I don't blame you.
Yep.
I don't blame you. And how did that, so it kind of gave you the opportunity and almost like the permission to feel your feelings.
Yep.
How did that change the rest of the experience?
It made me ask for the time. Hey, I want time alone with Deb. It was truly a gift.
Yeah.
And I had my time alone with her. I felt a lot more closure, I'm sure, than I would have. And I hope that everyone understands that. I've told people that since then, talking with friends who have lost parents, or I had a friend who had to, put down her dog, and that was really hard. And it was at the same time as we were losing Deb. And I think I even said that to her, like, it's okay to feel your feelings. There's no hierarchy to grief. This is, you're going through it, So, it was just the most compassionate and selfless thing that he could have done in that moment.
Yeah. That's amazing. So hospice is there. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of back to like the family, Deb's children kind of scrambling too and trying to figure out like, hey, what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what was going on at the house?
So there's like she asked for her sisters. Her sisters came down. Their cousin Colette, who we're very close with, is like a sibling, came. So like Colette, myself, Brad, my brother-in-law, we are all scrambling to like make sure that these people are eating, to keep the house clean.
So while the visitors are visiting, the family is coming in from out of town.
Yeah, and we're like picking up everything.
We're
trying to keep it all together.
You're housekeeping.
Yes, absolutely.
And being almost
logistics coordinator.
Logistics coordinators.
Picking up people from the airport and
meal planners.
Absolutely. Everything. And
transportation.
Meanwhile, the kids, Amanda, Ben, Jake. Jake called, I know for a fact, he found and called figured out where to donate her body, called them.
Ahead of time.
Had to get body removal, like ask them, what do I, and that really, at that point, I mean, that was really, really hard because he's talking about his mother who's still with us and talking about just her body, body removal.
Right. Meanwhile, she's present. Right.
She's talking to us.
Right.
I will say this, it was because her family rallied around her. That part was great.
Yeah.
What was terrible about it was figuring it all out. And then she did have a will that had like her finances divvied up, but it wasn't, we didn't know hospice. We didn't know, where to donate her body. And then after that, we had a memorial for her. We coordinated everything. She was very specific of what she didn't want, but we had no idea what she did want.
Interesting.
So, and the family was so spread out, we didn't know where to do it. We ended up having it here in Indianapolis because that's where she was born and raised in Speedway. So we did it at a park. She did not want to have like a funeral home experience.
Sure.
But even that was tough to coordinate. We just didn't know. We didn't know.
Right. Right. Did you feel at all like, because I've grown up when somebody passes, you go to the funeral home and like there's just like this track, right? Like you call the funeral home and you just go.
Yep.
But if you deviate from that, it seems like, which we have done a couple of times with our grandparents, we've deviated from that.
Yep.
It almost feels like with no real like deep understanding of what exactly is wanted, kind of your point. Like we knew what was not wanted.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's like, okay, so what do we do?
Yeah. What? Right. Exactly.
And then it's like, so if you veer off that, you know, call it traditional track, it leaves this wide open world of like, you can do anything.
It felt like planning someone else's wedding.
Interesting.
I mean, in a, you know,
can
more morbid.
Yeah. Talk more about that.
Planned a whole wedding, right? I know what I want. That was hard enough because there's so many moving pieces. There's so many different logistics that you have to figure out, things that you know, puzzle pieces basically that you're doing, components of this event.
Date, time, catering,
making it easy for other people, making it convenient.
Accommodations.
Do I want to do anything special? Are we going to do, I mean, flowers, decor, like.
Yep. Are we going to do readings? Are we going to have programs?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Songs.
Exactly. And the kids and their stepfather put it all together, and it was a cluster.
Was it?
I mean, no. The event itself was great.
Yeah.
Leading up to it was very stressful.
Sure.
And again, I know what they don't want.
Right.
I have no idea what they want.
So the rest of it.
No idea what she wanted.
So everything else is left up to interpretation.
Yeah.
From
guessing.
The kids and the stepfather.
Yes.
So you've got 4 different interpretations trying to come together.
Make a decision.
Yeah. And there's like at a wedding.
And have opinions.
Right. There's usually a bride and a groom at a wedding.
I didn't even let my husband have opinions for our wedding, you know?
Right. So you were the decision maker. And then
I was like, if I'm planning, I'm the decision maker and that's fine.
Right.
And it's going to have a clear vision. It was very difficult to get to a clear vision.
There was no one decision maker. There were multiple decision makers and probably even more influencing opinions than just those 4.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Cousins, aunts, people with kids who were like, oh, is this going to be, you know, how convenient is this going to be for me? Just everything.
When, from the time that Deb passed to the time that you had the memorial, like how much time in between are we talking?
We did it about 2 months later, right around her birthday.
So you did it 2 months later and it was still like this massive event to pull off.
Yes.
And
we didn't,
difficult.
And not to be morbid, but she had donated her body to science. We didn't have any sort of coordinating with like a casket or even we don't have a headstone. Like it's just, you know, off to the wind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of what she didn't want was the traditional path, and now you have to come up with the path. And I feel like everything is so deeply rooted. Our decisions have been so deeply rooted in our experiences on the traditional path. Once you start back to, you know, veering off of that, it's like, oh, wait, is there a resting place? Is there a headstone? Like how do you?
And by the way, 2 months figure this out while I was in like therapy over what had happened.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
So I know that that everyone else was really going, so you're trying to juggle all of these different things. You're trying to reckon with your own emotions.
And work, right? I mean,
and work.
And
my work was not great.
Okay. So you had to struggle with the time off. You had to struggle with. She
passed away on a Friday, and by Monday I was in the office.
Wow.
So they allowed me to take off the time to take care of her, but that was my own PTO. I didn't have any sort of grief, bereavement. Yeah. Time off. They were nice in the sense that like I would literally start crying at my desk, and they would be like, "Do you need to work from home for the rest of the day?" Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Like that part was nice.
But work
from home.
Right. And between Jake, Amanda, and Ben, similar experience, different experience?
Jake, similar. I think everyone was pretty much back to work on Monday. I think maybe Amanda took a few days off. Amanda also cleaned out the house. She was the only sibling we all had to go back to work. So she was the only sibling that was left in Florida, and she cleaned out. Like Deb was not a hoarder by any means, but she had a lot of stuff still. And there was a lot to go through. Deb was a every single day she had an Einstein's bagel, and it was the most ridiculous order. And she loved the people at Einstein's. We actually donated to the people at Einstein's.
Really?
Yeah. So we donated some of the inheritance, basically. And also, like, they were from different countries, and so they asked us for some of her clothing to send back home.
Oh, wow.
So we organized that.
Right. So Deb has this group of friends at Einstein Bagels that she interacts with.
Yeah.
And now part of Deb, even though it might be Deb in money to help support, part of it might be in physical goods that are on other people's bodies. Like, Deb is out there doing some magic and doing some work, and helpfulness and support for other people.
Yes.
Because you guys knew that and you chose to do it.
Because she would have loved it. And those people loved her.
Right.
And I can't believe that they would make this absolutely ridiculous order for her every single day.
Right.
Like, with love and happiness. And they were like, welcome her, like, hey, it's Deb. I mean, she would get it like toasted to the point that it would nearly set the building on fire.
So how did that wasn't written down anywhere?
No.
From Deb. We
just kind of decided
to do it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's super cool. And in doing it, you're like, hey, Deb would love this.
Felt really good. Yeah. That felt really good.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. I would love, and I'm sure there's, probably lots more to talk about. I would love it if you'd be open to it, to sharing a story about Deb. Like,
oh my gosh,
you knew her for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So recognizing, we've talked a lot about the last few days, right? That clearly bring back some tougher memories and some tougher times. Also some things like, helping Deb go to the restroom. Like, even though it was tough, it was a touching moment, great memory to some degree. It comes out of that. But like, let's go 5 years prior. Let's go 6, 7, 8 years prior.
Okay. I can tell you about, so Deb, you have to understand, was a very amazing mother. If you were a part of her circle, you were her kid. Like, you were her kid. And she was a single mother that raised 2 twin boys and a wonderful girl. And she was really tough. And the first time that I met her, I was so nervous. I was meeting her at a wedding, at a family wedding, and Jake and I had just started, we were like a year into dating, maybe like 6 months.
So Jake's taking you to the wedding.
Jake's taking me to the wedding in Atlanta.
Okay.
And she just welcomed me with absolute open arms. And she was like, oh my gosh, I've been stalking you on Facebook. You're so beautiful. I love you so much. I actually I don't know how PC this is, but she was like, I actually thought Jake was gay. He hasn't had a girlfriend in so long.
Just went right after it.
Just immediately, like straight to it. I was like, oh, well, he's not.
Surprise.
Yeah. It's nice to meet you. But just she was just really happy to meet you. And she made you feel it. And she had the most wonderful sense of humor of any person that I've ever met, honestly. And she was just a really special woman.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Glad you got to spend 10 years with her.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.